Jamie, have you managed to come back to earth from your brush with Charlie Brooker fame? Because that would have been...
I'm still riding high on that one. Come on, I'm going to die now on that for years.
Resistance is futile.
Welcome to the podcast, where we explore what's happening with AI, business, automation and culture, and ask, where on earth is all this going?
It was a great photo. He seemed like a nice guy as well.
Very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. Yeah, he was very chatty, very friendly, happy to answer questions and just kind of shoot the breeze. He was a really nice guy.
And you've also started an AI group.
Yes.
So the online chat and groups that you've had on Facebook have now exploded into the actual real world, which kind of freaky. So what's happening there?
Yeah,
I went on to one of them.
Yeah. So we started a couple of months ago. Just it was on a whim. It was like, you know what? I think I want to get the local community involved and do some stuff around AI and automation, that type of thing. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would class an explosion, but for the local community, it exploded. So we're I think just over 240 members now. We have also an active WhatsApp group as part of that. So
let's call it a caboose.
A caboose, yeah. A little puff of air.
Yeah,
it's of what's happened. But it's really nice, really active group, nice people, totally different backgrounds, and it's not just techies at all. It's people from all sorts. And
I met somebody from a university. I met someone who was an engineer. I met somebody who was just interested in this stuff, and I met business people who are looking to put it in their business. It's really and there's a lot of interest out there, and a lot of people just want to know what's going on with it. So it's
very nice. I think one of the nicest ones, actually, the first guy to turn up was a guy that had emailed me directly because he'd found the details in the local newspaper. I managed to get us a little bit of traction in the old-fashioned media. And he found the details, emailed me, sent me a very kind of formal...
You probably put it on radio as well.
Yeah, that's the next one. And he contacted and he arrived. He was first up and he was very, very interested. 79 years old, I believe, and really interested in how it's going to impact his banking experience.
Well, okay, very good. The future of AI. It's 80-years looking to have their bank account sorted for them. Soon it'll be the bank just turning around going, well, we don't know either because the AI won't tell us.
No, that's right. It's a black box.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm glad you've not let all that Charlie Brooker and networking go to your head, because I need your expert views on two big topics dominating the AI news cycle at the moment. The first up is going to be, is generative AI slowing down? Generative AI, exemplified by models like OpenAI's ChatGPT, are encountering significant challenges. Industry leaders, including those from OpenAI and Anthropic, report diminishing returns from scaling AI models, suggesting a potential plateau in performance improvements. Now, this slowdown is attributed to factors such as limited access to high-quality training data and computational constraints. Not enough chips, not enough data centers, basically, in operation, and there's not that much data in the world, Dr. Evil kind of problems, right? So is generative AI slowing down? Does it matter? We're going to be diving into that.
Okay.
And maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter, because what we might need is not ever-increasing chat cleverness, but instead a breakout application of the existing LLMs. And that will bring us to the second issue of today, which is the future of AI agents. So projections indicate that by 2030, AI agents will handle a substantial portion of digital interactions, with the AI agents market expected to grow from about 5 billion at the moment to around 47 billion by 2030. That's a huge
upside.
Quid,
isn't it?
Crazy, but that may not happen, but that's the projection. Annual growth rate of 44%, right? So that surge suggests a pretty transformative impact on industries, from consumer service to healthcare, as AI agents apparently become integral to operational workflows. It's a big ask, I think. So, by the way, big shout out to Michael Spencer on Substack with his AI Supremacy newsletter. It's essential reading if you like what I'm talking about.
More than our podcast.
I'd love to have Michael on the podcast, because I've just been getting, I think it's his framing basically. So, we're not, he's not sponsoring us or anything. Michael doesn't even know I'm mentioning him on this podcast, but he understands what's coming up in terms of how to frame it so that you can understand, much like we like to do on this podcast. But I do get a lot of insight from Michael Spencer as well as you, Jamie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dan.
So let's get back to the first issue. Is generative AI slowing down? Just to give some framing for the audience, Jamie, and then I'm going to get you to jump in. In October of this year, OpenAI secured $6.6 billion in funding, elevating its valuation to $157 billion.
Wow.
Despite growing revenues, the company is projected to incur a $5 billion loss this year, primarily due to substantial investments in AI research and infrastructure. Now, to justify the high valuation, investors may seek annual returns of around 20% over the next decade, implying OpenAI's value would need to reach approximately $1 trillion in that time. Not impossible.
No.
But some observers noticed that the improvements in each model of AI is slowing down, and this has been reflected internally as well. So is it slowing down, and does it matter?
I like to look at the real world and see what people are doing and see what people are using. And let's come back to the economics of it just in a moment. But there are some pointers that suggest that it's absolutely, with them specifically I'm talking about, that it's not slowing down at all. In fact, it's accelerating kind of exponentially. So one indicator is this, and it's a very simple one. When I'm on the train and I'm going into London, you can't help yourself. You have a glance, if you're standing up, you look at what people are using on their phones. I'm starting to see more and more people that on their phones, they're on ChatGPT. So that just tells you how, and now, a year ago, that wouldn't have been the case. The odd, kind of like specialist or geek or whatever might be using it. But in much the same way you see people checking Instagram, I'm starting to see more and more people having it on their phone whilst they're sitting on the train, do what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's one indicator of uptick. So rather than decline, kind of uptick in terms of people using it. I think the other thing is that I go to a number of different events on a pretty regular basis to do with AI and stuff like that. Now, this is not so much the front end of ChatGPT. This will be using the back end, so using APIs. So, but basically connecting into the brain of OpenAI to do things, often called wrappers, applications that put wrappers around it. And as a kind of small show of hands, I think there was probably 30 or 40 people in the last event I went to. I think it was probably about 75, 80% of them, all the AI work doing, and these are people in all different areas of AI and automation and things like that. They're all using OpenAI for this technology. So it's kind of mushrooming. So to go back to the point of the revenue and the profit, I guess to use Amazon as an example, I mean, how many years were they running at a loss, just to kind of get traction?
Amazon's a good comparison.
Yeah. And I think that's the model here. I think what they're doing is, they've got the free version, the $20. They just today, I think, released now this $200 Super Pro version, which gives you unlimited access to everything.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are going to use that, but they're building their audience. You can tell they're building their audience. They're getting us all hooked in and reliant on it. And then obviously over time, the prices will probably increase. But I think that's the model here. And that's where I think it's going.
But also there's an element of consolidation that may happen. So OpenAI is the most recognized brand, perhaps, and Anthropic, of course, that you end up, though, with, and although it's a totally separate issue, there is an element of money. What they're finding is all those people on the train, for example, very similar to people using free services that were provided before the .com bust, right? Were done by funding, where people were trying to find out what would work. Now, of course, those services have to evaporate if there is no model in that. So people on the train are not going to probably pay for the services that they're using for fun. They're just not valuable enough yet. So that's the big question. And the difference between Amazon and this, to my mind, is that with Amazon, what would have happened, the worst that would happen really, would you have a failed logistical model where you could book online all this logistics, and that model might fall over. Really wouldn't be that much of a problem, but it'd be bad for the investors. But in this case, it feels like higher and higher risk taking to get a breakthrough and to get to be the supreme Google of AI, as it were. Does feel like too much risk taking to me.
Do you mean for the investors that are putting plowing money into this?
No, although that is a risk. No, I mean in terms of the risks of trying things, and we're talking black box problems here that we may not know what works and what doesn't, and that is why it'll be a separate episode I think we should really do soon. But it's why a lot of the money is pivoting to the defense sector. They are picking up more and more in defense, and Palantir is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, so
exactly right. But that's where the money is, because they need it. They need to be able to turn on a tap that doesn't ever turn off. Whereas with the public, it's quite fickle, and you're in you've got to look after consumers, but you can keep on pumping the defense, primer forever.
I mean, Palantir are their own entity with their own AI, so they're not connected with OpenAI in any way, are they? Or has there been any announcements of OpenAI doing anything militarily? I don't think so.
I could dig into it. There is, I don't know the exact details of it, but there is definitely talk of how AI will fit into that. Don't forget, AI is the backbone for a lot of these applications, in the same way that Google Maps gets used, their data gets used for these things. OpenAI then gets used as the model that goes, that underpins a lot of the stuff, and they get paid for that.
Yeah, but I think I was just actually thinking to myself whether, I mean, there's no exposure at the moment, or there's no transparency at the moment about where OpenAI is making its revenue. Is there? I don't believe so. There's some estimates and things like that, but how much of it is coming from subscriptions? How much of it is coming from some use of their data? That would be very interesting to see. But I think also maybe we're not seeing the long game. Google is another perfect comparison and example. Google started as a search engine, whether we knew it at the time, whether even they knew it at the time, I'm sure they did, but once they had, and I often use the phrase eyeballs, once they had enough eyeballs on their search engine, that there was then a realization that this could be monetized massively. And that's where they make the vast majority of their revenue is the kind of pay-per-click and things like that.
Well, Kevin Kelly asked Sergey Brin early 2000s at a party. It was a flip line, but it's become quite famous since. He said, what are you doing with this free search? Surely there's no business model in doing that. And the idea of an internet based on advertising was a new idea then. So Sergey Brin said, we're not building a search engine, we're building an AI. And I think that's quite telling. So these long games are, I don't think these long games are not transparent. People do talk about what they are. You listen to executives enough, you'll hear what they're trying to do. I think the problem is we don't know what distortions happen to the economy when these things are implemented, because the influence they wield is so enormous, not just culturally,
but this is my point,
but democratically.
If we use the Google example, are OpenAI trying to build an audience, a massive audience that are hooked in the same way that we got hooked on Google? That it becomes the place to go. And now OpenAI is becoming the place to go to answer your questions, have a conversation, all this kind of thing. And is the longer game with OpenAI to use those eyeballs, billions of eyeballs on this on a regular basis, with the knowledge, very much like Google, they have the history, it's kind of, it's not tracking you, but it knows about you. Is that going to be used at some point to target us with adverts or whatever it might be? Does that become the new pay-per-click?
Well, if history is prelude, then yes, of course, that's going to happen. And I did this the other day. I was doing some writing and I wanted to investigate my own tone and style. So I just put in some of my writing and I said, is this like my tone based on the way I write? And the sort of this sort of style I have. And it gave me really interesting feedback. So it really understood in granular detail how I think. Because of all the chats I've done.
It's not too difficult, though, is it?
No, exactly. It didn't take long. It's faster than all the other results that I've ever done. So getting to know us intimately is definitely, I think, a problem if it, of course, becomes then used and monetized.
Yes.
And you just can't see how that we end up being okay democratically with that black box. But then we've been okay with.
I was going to say, we've been okay with that in social media and all these kind of things.
Cambridge Analytica and so on.
Yeah. So I guess how.
So, but generative, to hang on, just to make sure we're staying on track, just with the generative AI thing, if you're saying, even if technically or anecdotally, we're slowing down, we're reaching the peak of that particular version of AI, you're saying there's enough innovation in there to capture a market that could be quite big. So therefore, it's almost irrelevant.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's funny. So they've now made available, if you're on the $20 a month subscription, you now get the 4 4.0 or 4.0, the kind of unlimited access to that. And now it's multimodal as well. So you can add pictures, you can upload things and things like that, which you could do before on just the standard version. And it's funny. So this morning I was playing around with that new version, which supposedly is much better, more powerful, and so on and so forth. It didn't feel that much more impressive. But to be honest with you, I'm still amazed and impressed by the existing model. So it's like I can't actually see how much better it can be at the moment. What can it do? It's speaking to me in such a human way and answering my questions in exactly how I want them to be answered. So it's hard to imagine what the next iteration of that is. Maybe it's slightly faster. I don't know. Maybe it's not just giving me words as a response. Maybe it's creating an image without me asking, or creating a small video or something. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it's or workflow diagrams. Maybe that becomes better. And maybe that's
It definitely feels like we haven't capped the usefulness of what exists already if we're able to apply it to things. And I think that's what brings us to AI agents, because if you didn't need to keep on increasing the effectiveness or the humanness of chat, and I don't honestly think you do, although the language, I think it had to end up becoming corporate speak, didn't it? Because it had to please everybody. So basically the language of OpenAI, for example, is just like talking to a LinkedIn article. It's just so bland. It's like, you almost want to be able to turn on the settings and go, everything from total maverick to boring LinkedIn presenter or something like that.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Maybe. But that's the problem. So the corporatization of it is a shame, I think, inevitable. But if they could fix that, then I'd be more interested. But I think, anyway, the long story short is I think it may be that what we're seeing is trying to wring out more and more from the current iterations. Like you say, anecdotally, you see it slowing down, but then maybe it's okay to have reached the top of the S-curve with the LLMs, right? Yeah. So therefore, is it possible that AI agents, which make sense, at least as a story, on top of this now where you have some new application for what they are? Do you want to explain in your words what AI agents are for somebody who's just come across this?
Yeah. And then these are new. This is the new hot topic. So the idea being that, so let me think of the best way to explain this. At the moment, when you use ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that, you sit in front of your computer, you type things, or on your phone, you may speak to it, you may, however you decide you want to interact with it. And it may or may not have access to the internet, depending on which version you have, but it will go and research things and find them out and kind of help you. Sorry, a fly crawling around my head. So at the moment, you can just ask it questions and kind of get responses, but you can't get it to do more than that. So you can just get it kind of like, speak and response type thing. It doesn't have access to other systems on the computer or anywhere on your phone. The idea of agents is that there might be an agent, kind of like you might have a team of people. So for example, if I wanted to get a copy of my latest invoices that I've sent out to some of our clients, instead of doing it all myself, in real life, I might go and speak to my accounts person and say, oh, could you generate me the invoices from, Dave for the last year? And then it would go into our finance system. They would go into the finance system, find the invoices, and then give them back to me. That's a person, a human. And the idea of agents is that will be a kind of a software agent, an AI agent that you will be able to speak to in plain language, ask it questions to do things, and it will have the ability and right or security ability to be able to log into these other systems and do things. So that's at a very high level, that's what it does. And then you get onto the concept of agents speaking to agents. So you could be the CEO who asks for something. His agent goes and speaks to the head of finance. The head of finance agent goes and speaks to the payroll person, and then it all kind of goes back up. So yeah, pretty big when you start to think about it.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, Can of Worms doesn't do justice to the possible problems.
Not after the TV show I've just been watching.
Exactly. I think Black Mirror have done enough justice to us as a cultural tool for us to kind of have a bit of a neck when sort of these sorts of ideas first get bandied around, and it may work. And so I don't want to appear just cynical, but of course, between here and that happening is a whole lot of iterations that we may reveal that it just doesn't work at all. I mean, it may not even be remotely practical.
Yeah, and I think this is, so in my world of automation, there's a lot of people saying what's called RPA, robotic process automation, is dead. It's all agents and things like that. And I'm not so sure. And the reason why is that I guess think about it like an office productivity suite, like Microsoft Office. Yeah, it can do like Excel. You can do amazing things in Excel, right? And I'm a relatively smart guy, and I can do some pretty basic things in Excel. But if I want to do something really complex in Excel, I'm looking. It doesn't matter how much I kind of ask it. Even now with ChatGPT and Copilot, I can ask it the questions. Oh, how do I do this? How do I do this? In the end, I kind of want to throw my toys out the pram. Can I just get someone to do this for me? Right. And maybe we'll get to that point where it will understand better what I'm trying to articulate. But this idea that we're all going to be these autonomous kind of, I think there's actually different ways of thinking about it. If you're an autonomous person working, doing your stuff, and you have these agents going out and doing all these things, you have to be able to tell them what to do and understand how they're going to interact to ask them the right questions. But when you magnify that and put that into an office environment where you're part of the team, part of a department, part of a whole structure, the idea of individuals creating all these workflows for themselves, which may or may not clash with or cause problems with other workflows that everyone else is doing, it sounds like chaos. So I'm not quite sure where it's going to go.
Yeah. And I did a kind of thought experiment with this. I was think of at least on the simplest level of somebody like, my wife does a local charity, and she gets funded by National Lottery for that. Now, she has to periodically go searching for grants or other means. She's looking at different ways of funding the charity in the medium term. But there's an endless amount of form filling that goes on, right? So it's like, okay, so you take an AI agent and you train it on all the data about form filling, and you get it to just basically give it a goal, which is, I need this much funding, and you go and keep going and applying for these funds until someone, until you get this much funding. Great. If you're the only person with an AI agent, but everyone's got an AI agent, and suddenly the entire system is just inundated with funding applications.
Do
you see what I'm saying?
And then AI agents responding to those funding applications.
Exactly.
I think about this a lot, and I think this kind of, to me, reminds me of the kind of the social media thing that you've got, which is you've got AI creating social media posts on LinkedIn, let's say, and then you're having another AI read those social media to potentially summarize them for you, but actually probably to auto respond to them, which then gets an auto response. I mean, where does this end?
Spam.
Yeah.
An AI version of spam. So there's that, and that doesn't, we're too early in this for any sort of cultural references, because I don't think enough people are talking about it. But there will come a time when these sorts of issues become clearer. And I think those are sorts of, not individually that it's a problem. You individually think this is great. But with a lot of things,
collectively,
without system thinking, which is the problem that's going on at the moment, then you don't, there's not enough dark imagination. That's the problem.
I was having a chat yesterday at the dinner, not the dinner, sorry, the AI forum. I don't know if you were speaking to the same person, but there's now and this is by O2, the mobile phone company, and other phone companies do exist. And they now have an AI agent that picks up the phone to spam kind of fraud callers. So, when you get those calls from someone in India or other parts of the world, and they're saying, you've got a problem, the virus on the computer, and so now they have an AI bot that takes those calls, and its goal is to keep them on the phone talking for as long as possible, because the longer that agent is talking, they can't be kind of scamming other people. But of course, what's happened now is these scammers now have AI agents that do the call that speaks to the receiving scam block. So this is exactly what we've just described.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are the sorts of things where I think until we do them, we don't find out how real those concerns are, which is, of course, the problem. So I'm not advocating for just not doing anything, but it's just like, how do we see culturally whether these things are starting to happen and have a vehicle to say, stop doing it this way, or whatever. I feel like there's just a very much look, we're doing AI agents. It's a massive system change to everything that you do in the entire economy, and just lump it. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. No, you can't just roll this out and go, because you can buy it, that it's good. That's what I think is the problem with this sort of stuff.
Well, also there's the innate, I think he talked about, Mustafa Suleiman talked about this in his book, it's kind of the innate curiosity of mankind.
Right.
Is that if it's there, we're going to try it, even though it's bad, even though it's rubbish or whatever, we just can't help ourselves. So this stuff keeps getting put in front of us and we keep testing it and trying it. And it's, where will it end up?
Well, the thing is, and I'm not even the guardian type personality that would normally say stop. I'm normally the risk taker. Right? And I'm the one that's going, so I can only imagine that guardian type personalities, which about 30-something% of the population, engineering type mindsets, are just, in apoplexy about how just ridiculous the quick this is to be rolled out, considering the implications. So AI agents are going to become a big subject if they get any traction. It may turn out that they just don't work. I think that's the other thing. They're trialing them, but there's no evidence that they will work in any complex situation.
Well, to give kind of this isn't techie, but the people who are slightly technical will understand this. So there's the technology that we use, or some of the technology we use, is called robotic process automation. It basically replicates a person sitting in front of a computer and clicking bits and pieces and doing that, which is great and serves its purpose. But sometimes it's not ideal because the software can change and now the robot doesn't know where to click because the button's moved, right? So it's in a very straightforward way. So that's why APIs, for people who don't know, is a kind of a language that allows different programs to speak to each other to be able to move data between each other. So ideally, we as a business try and use API first, because then it doesn't matter if the button moves, because we're kind of talking kind of language to language. It works. But there was something, I think it was Claude, one of the AI companies, did release something a month or two ago, which looks pretty mind blowing. And I saw someone do a live demo of it as well. So what this Claude does is it has this ability now to interact with your desktop. So at the moment it's in a kind of test bed, so it's only working with what they've given you access to. But you could type into it, I want to create a Word document that's all about Dave and what he does for a living. Could you go and do some research and find out for me? So it will take us. It's very clever the way it does it. It takes a screenshot of the window, and it can see the Word is on the desktop. So it goes, I'm going to try and use. I can see Internet Explorer. So I'm going to try Internet Explorer, for example, or Chrome. So it double clicks Chrome. It says, right, I've got Chrome, and this is the AI talk. It says, I've opened Chrome. I'm now going to search for Dave to see what he does. So then it does, and each time it's taking a screenshot, looking at the screenshot, and then deciding what to do next.
Can't find any work here. Can't find any work here either.
Well, so it opens Word, then writes the document, and you're seeing all this happen in real time. And what this is kind of on the agent track, but this is what a lot of people are saying is going to happen. So it will be, I could be sitting here talking to my computer, and it will be opening applications, doing things, filling out forms, doing that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of talk in that community, or generally, that actually we're going to move away from this API world now. So now it will be kind of desktop automation first over API. Why bother even having an API? Because it can just interact like you can and interact with the program without having to train it. So I think that's another kind of weird area that this is going into. So
so if it started localized, as in you might build your own AI agent that does things on your desktop only, for example. Of course, it's going to interact with the internet as well. Then I think in isolation, it seems to make sense. So, for example, a cultural reference would be her. The first thing it did was go and clean up his life, basically. Let's have a look at your email. Done all these memos and stuff for him, and basically just tidied up his life, did all his errands, and that took about 20 seconds. And was like, right, what's next?
And you can see that. And there are many occasions, not even so much on the desktop. For me, the one thing that I'm still amazed that we can't do is I want to pick up my phone or be driving and say, Send a WhatsApp to Dave to tell him, I'm going to be late for the podcast, and it will open up WhatsApp and do it. But it does, obviously, limitations stop these things being able to do that. But that would be very helpful, and I could see that I would use that type of stuff a lot, or go into my WhatsApp to tell me, can you just read out the messages for me, that are just from the important people in my life, that type of thing.
I mean, I'd prefer if Scarlett Johansson just came around my house and helped me.
Easy, Dave. Easy.
Even if she just told me what to clean up, I would do it. But that would be expensive. Probably a lot more expensive than an OpenAI subscription. So there's that. Exactly. All right. So where does that leave us so over the next year, what you're seeing potentially is no meaningful slowdown in generative AI, in that it doesn't matter if it slows down at the top end in terms of research or investment. For even if there was a meltdown in share prices because of it, like it happened with the .com boom.
Yeah.
In the medium to long term, you just don't think that matters. I mean, I personally don't.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. The train is well underway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In terms of it being in the real world. Because the last time there were these AI winters, and this is what people hint at when they say, well, we could see a slowdown in generative AI at the top of an S-curve, basically. It's as if in the past, it was all this investment that went into AI that went nowhere. I mean, I wouldn't say it wasn't helpful. Of course, it was finding out what doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it went nowhere in terms of going out into the real world. But now we've got so many things in the world being used.
Yeah, that's the difference. That's the difference. Before it was, I always use the analogy of kind of blockchain and crypto. Now, a few people have made quite a lot of money in the last few weeks in crypto, but I always come back to it. When my hairdresser was telling me about ChatGPT a year and a half ago, you realized this is hit the big time now. This is, every man or every woman is now using this.
Yeah.
Now, they're not saying the same about the metaverse, for example. And they're not saying the same about blockchains. Yeah, people talk about blockchain and there's a market, but it hasn't hit that critical mass. And AI has, with the help, I think, of ChatGPT initially. Now all these other players are getting on board. And I think possibly there will be the equivalent of the .com boom, because there are so many people trying to work out an application, a bust. I think there will be a bust. I think there'll be a clean out, because I think that there's so many companies trying to create the next new thing that wraps around ultimately OpenAI, and there's loads of them, and that's where the investments go in these, it is exactly the same as a .com boom. There's an AI for this, an AI for that, and an AI for this, but there's not enough room for all these things. There will be some winners and there'll be some losers.
Yeah, in the end, we'll all have the super intelligence in our pocket, times 100 what we have now on our phone through search. But it'll be provided by an oligopoly. Yeah. Unless there's reasons to and political will to break them up. It's going to be an oligopoly, because that's the only way that you can get the stuff delivered at scale. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that seems to be the way it is.
Yeah.
So that seems to me to be bubble and bust.
I think so. I
don't know when.
It's kind of off topic, I guess, but a couple of things. This is not
investing advice. Do not use our talk as investing advice. I should have.
Definitely don't use mine.
Definitely don't use. The shares go up as well as down.
Yeah, that's right. There was a couple of things. So one of the things I think we were talking about at the forum, which was, and I'm going to get it wrong, is it BlackRock? BlackRock. So the humongous.
You said Dark Pebble or something. And I was like,
don't take invested advice.
I think I understand what he means.
I had about 3 pints by then, so please excuse me. So BlackRock, massive. They're private equity on there, hedge funds, everything. They put a lot of money into a lot of things. Apparently, I was having a chat with one of the guys there who works for a company that has been invested in by them, and there is a moratorium across all of their investments about any more AI investment at the moment. They're pausing, and I think that's rather telling. Because I guess you've got a lot of companies all trying to gain the benefit of which I think there is, but they're taking a more cautious approach, saying, look, let's slow down. And that might be something we see a little bit in terms of people want to see tangible results, and I think there's a lot of things happening at the moment that have no tangible results. So
yeah, that's it. And hence that's why I'm cautious about whether or not agents are just another train that the likes of Sam Altman would like everyone to jump on and say, please invest in this thing because, this is the train that's now leaving town.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a nothing burger. Of course, it may all work out. But the point is they do, I think, feel they've reached the limits that they can do with this product, and it isn't integrated into the economy enough in any way that's useful to people. It's a big change, but a lot of that's been cultural as we get used to the fact that AI is actually a thing now. And even depending on your definition of it, I would say you may even have a version of AGI. No, I don't think AGI because I think it's just too woolly a term, but human level intelligence, not consciousness, intelligence in the way that some of those responses are on, I think, Anthropic better than ChatGPT, much more intuitive, but still.
I've not played around with Anthropic that much to know.
It's at a level of being, if I'd inputted questions, like this in 10 years ago into something like a chat room, and it's the thing I'm talking to a human, I absolutely would have been convinced it was a human talking back to me, a very smart human. There's no way, and if I hadn't been told. Now that I know, of course, I might then go looking for patterns which make it look like an AI. That's different. It's definitely...
That's the Turing test right there.
It's the Turing test right there.
It's just one word following next word, kind of, this thing,
which is cumulatively not the experience that you receive.
We
may be receivers of information and then we pass it on.
Yes.
And that a lot of what we're doing with our communication, and psychologists could have a field day with this, is basically parroting to some degree somebody else's opinion anyway. And that really there isn't any original thought. It's just a lot of thoughts that keep on going around and around. And the art world is full of this. I mean, that is the history of art. Is references upon references.
Absolutely.
So culturally, that may turn out to be, we've already passed the Turing test, in which case the LLMs don't need to keep improving.
That's right.
But if they'd achieved that, and then stopped, imagine the investment would have just stopped. So they have to create this new thing. So again, that's where I think we're at. I think we're going to be ending up with a version of agents, whether they work or not is another thing, but I totally agree with you. I think we're in for a pop. I don't know when.
Yeah. I think, okay, so that was one of the things on the agenda. There was a couple of other things. So I've been thinking about Apple.
Oh yeah.
And they made their big announcement about kind of Apple Intelligence, very clever AI intelligence. It's all gone a bit flat, hasn't it? Have you noticed? I don't know. Have they released it? I don't even know if they've released it yet. And you needed a certain phone for it to work.
Yeah,
and
you've got to be on the latest phone.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of had to. Everyone has to have AI and everything. I don't know if they felt like they had a choice. But in the end, people know what the experience of using ChatGPT is like.
Yes.
The fact that Siri could be like that doesn't help much. I mean, it does. But I'd rather have an integration of one of the big players into the phone as an app that can control my phone rather than Siri.
Well, yeah, but I think that's what they're trying to do. They're using, layering it on OpenAI to use Siri to be able to then do things on your phone. That's the plan. But normally, all these new announcements that happen daily with all these different things. I've not been watching anything or hearing anything from Apple. So you'd think there'd be people making a much bigger noise about it.
Oh, I see. Right. It's not their baby, is it? I don't think they can get cut through in the same way. They used to get cut through for every release because it was the tech news. But Apple is not the tech news in the same way anymore. I wouldn't say they're playing catch up. Maybe they're talking about it all the time, but no one's reporting it much anymore because it's just Apple's version of OpenAI. So it doesn't cut through. I don't know. But no, you're right. It hasn't been on my radar. I'm certainly not upgrading my phone in a hurry. I've tried to, frankly, I've tried to just keep the same phone for the last, I think, 3, maybe 4 years.
Me too.
Because what's going on with that? I don't need a bloody new phone every 18 months. So
the last thing is just from another group that I'm in. Someone pointed out that obviously they're in the marketing space and kind of email reach outs and search space. And they're starting to see for the first time a particular link on one of the websites that they work on for those that don't know, when you're in marketing, you can track where people have come from. So if they found you through LinkedIn or they found you through Google or whatever, you can see the path of where they came from. And he's now starting to see ChatGPT.com as the referring path and to one specific page in the website that they manage. And on this group, there's a lot of chatter now about what is it about that page that ChatGPT.com is picking up on, this kind of thing. So I think the people in the world of marketing must be thinking about this as well. This is as I said before about eyeballs. The eyeballs are no longer where they were. So now, how are you going to become found in this new world?
Yeah, totally different. But I think it'll take a long time to play out. But that's the beginning of it. So when I look at really established content experts like Rand Fishkin, so he started Moz back in the day.
Okay. Yeah.
He's now got his own company, and he talks about content marketing all the time, which is the only marketing that's really left, to be honest with you. People do advertising, obviously, but the main thing that works, getting people into your orbit, is your own content marketing, where you make useful information that helps people make decisions, not necessarily about your product, but maybe your product. That's content marketing, educational sort of stuff. And he says that shift at the moment is all about still creating content that then, it used to be in the old days, people would search for stuff on Google. They now find stuff on social or on this platform still. So these are the platforms that are driving stuff rather than any AI yet. They are finding stuff even in ChatGPT, for example, that's about a subject they are interested as a source. And then they go on TikTok or wherever, find that source. And then they go and search that company. And Google, now on the marketing thing, all of that information is showing up as, look, Google is where he found. No, Google was just the index. Google was the phone book where you went and finally looked up the company. And until that changes, people will still think that Google is actually the big search engine. And I think when that changes, that will hurt them a lot. But at the moment, culturally, people are really embedded with Google. I don't think that's going to change quickly, but who knows? That you're right. That could suddenly be a sea change.
I suspect that I often get into a discussion with one of the guys in the other groups who is a PPC guy, and his argument is that Google stopped being a search engine 10 years ago. They are a market. They are effectively an advertising company, a targeted advertising company. And
pretty useless one as well. I've turned off my Google ads.
So have we.
Yeah.
But he was saying that a lot of their revenue comes through their video, YouTube and all these other channels now, just because they can target the right kind of audience. But I maintain the fact, coming back to eyeballs again, if I'm not going to Google to find things and millions of other people are not anymore, they're using ChatGPT to get references or whatever, then the value of what Google is offering diminishes. They can't, the price that they charge for their PPCs is surely going to come down, because the value, if I'm an advertiser, I want to be in front of as many people as possible, the right kind of people as possible. So, I think interesting times ahead. Very interesting times ahead.
That's a good place to leave it. Good to chat as always, Jamie.
Yeah, lovely to see you.
And we'll talk to you again soon. I think we need to talk about defense spending and AI. That's a very big and potentially scary thing. And it may actually be driving a lot of innovation that we don't want. So that's coming up soon.
Resistance.